sure we protect each other's mental space. If you ever need me, just call. I'ma come running, give it my all. Love is love, God wins. Keep your vibrations high and watch how your blessings.
Rising Namaste Ashe, salutation, salam, peace, peace, peace to everybody. You know, as we open up this live like we always do, let's just see if we can listen to some music just for a couple minutes. You know,
we've been journeying in the wrong direction this whole time. We've been journeying outside of ourselves. Why?
Rough to wise, talk to him.
It's been a long time on here pushing out knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Maybe this is the year right here. Energy. Go within. There's something inside of you.
we got to do better collectively, you know?
Right? Energy. Go within. There's something inside of you.
We got to do better collectively, you know?
Energy. The first stage is realizing that you are. That's the first step. Confront yourself. Realizing that you are. Energy. It's been a long time on here pushing out knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. They can't put negative notions on us. Think about it. Great things is happening, whether they want to believe it or not. Maybe this is the year right here. This is the year for it right here. Right? Energy. Go within. There's something inside.
We got to do better collectively, you know?
Go within. There's something inside.
We got to do better collectively, you know? One's image of oneself should be greater than reality. Don't let nobody tell you that you ain't great, because you are.
Rough to wise.
Energy. We've been journeying in the wrong direction this whole time. We've been journeying.
Yeah, like I say, hope everybody's doing great out there. The topic of today is basically, blood eaters, or remembering those who eat blood. However you want to look at this, there were some people that we probably should have looked up back then, some princesses that belonged to the Kahazis, I want to say. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but this is like way before DNA testing came about. This was in, dynasty times, so if we go back to that time, and why is this important? Because Constantine married in, he married this family in, right? If you look at this right here, it says eaters of blood, identity thieves, so on and so forth. But you see, it also says marriage to Constantine, right? At the bottom, it says marriage to Constantine, right? And this is going into the Second Council of Nicaea. So the Second Council of Nicaea is formed, this is going back to different stories. The dynasty of this goes back before blood, like the DNA that we know of today that talks about stuff, right? And this is roughly between 1788 1860. Louis J. Epstein. Do y'all get where we going with this? Do y'all see why this is important? I'm gonna share the screen. Right? This goes back. Now look at this. Louis J. Epstein, right? This goes back to history, right? Ukrainian rabbi, 1870, the first reference of this between the Ashkenazi Jews and the Kanhazis, whatever. Okay, so this is part of a history, right? That is connected to what we see today and what's going on today, right? This was the upper white race, the upper, this was a social structure, right? They created a social structure overall, right? And this is how their overall idea structure was based for their society. Now I'm gonna read it. Let them read it.
The Khazar Khanate had a
The
heterogeneous,
Khazar.
multilingual ethnic composition confessing all major religions including paganism, shamanism, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. The ruling strata of the Khazars originated from the western Turk state, Dokturk. In Khazaria, there were political and military elites, and the ruling house was a relatively small clan whose origin was distinct from that of the majority of their subjects. The ruling elite of the Khazars converted Judaism in the 9th century. This ethnically and religiously diverse society was stratified into several classes such as settled agriculturalists, herders, tradesmen, Muslim merchants, Muslim mercenaries, members of the army, craftsmen, and slaves. Class. Many historical sources classified the Khazars as two different ethnicities, Black Khazars, Kara Khazars, and White Khazars, AK Khazars. The Black Khazars were the lower classes, the population, commoners and tradesmen, that was subordinate to or ruled by the White, AK, Khazars, who were the uppermost class in the Khanate, the nobility, warrior elite, and ruling classes. The Khazar social strata included a dual monarchy at the top, which consisted of the Khagan and the Beg. The sacral isolation of the Khagan developed gradually, and he became a spiritual figurehead while the Beg became co-monarch and military leader. Below the Beg came the Kender Khagan, deputy Beg, Javshigar, sergeant, Tarkhan, commander of troops, Tuduan, governors, El-Teber, vassal kings, and vizier, official responsible for affairs related to the Muslim community. Below the Khazar nobility came a group of privileged commoners and functionaries, such as Tarkhans, judges, and local governors. There was standing army, Al-Arsiya mercenaries, Muslim mercenaries, in the service of the Khanate. This ethnically diverse society also included other classes such as settled agriculturalists, herders, tradesmen, members of the army, craftsmen, and slaves. According to Gumalev, in Khazaria there were also Muslim merchants who lived and had private houses in the capital. There were also 25 subject rulers. All subject rulers were obligated to send daughters to the harem of the Khagan. They constituted the second of two distinctive classes of privileged nobles. The first were those of the ruling pastoralist society, and the second were those of the subjugated agriculturalist society.
Now you might ask, why is this important? We're going to get into that. Okay, we're definitely going to get into this because later on down the line, this, when you get into the history of it, you go back to the Constantine, right? You go back to Constantine, and then it's some people that we should probably look up from that time, right? Let's look up Princess. Let's look up this person. See what we find in the history. It's the Hellenized version of the Turkish word. Baptist arranged was Kali Princess, the daughter of who becomes emperor by marrying Eastern Roman. Yep, that's it. Let's see if they go into it. Hold up. Okay, so here we are, right? Because like I say, where am I reading this? Look, right, it's right there on the screen. The screen is right in front of you. It says it at the bottom. This is the Great Awakening pyramid, basically. So we're diving into like, this is this. So what you're looking at on the screen is like the parts of this that's broken down. So when you break it down and you study it, it's some people that's on here that you might want to look up. It's some people that's connected to the Great Awakening, or it's a pyramid of reincarnated souls. But some people are going to tie it to the Baphomet, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? It says it right there: the Great Pyramid of Reincarnated Souls. You can look it up. Great Pyramid of Reincarnated Souls. Zoom in. Feel free to look up other stuff on there. Look into some of the stuff that it's talking about on there, because it's bringing us into what's going on now with America, and how all these different points got moved around in order to create it. It also talks about their plan of how they're going to bring in World War III, so on and so forth, allegedly, supposedly, right? So this is important because this is where Constantine comes in at. And remember, Constantine was in charge of the Council of Nicaea, right? The churches, right? So if Constantine married this, person right here, then I think we should know about the person that he married according to the Second Council of Nicaea, because the First Council of Nicaea we know about, 325, First Council of Nicaea, but that Council of Nicaea got dispersed after he tricked them and made them put the falsitries in the book and change dates and times and so on and so forth, right? So they got dispersed. And then he came out with a Second Council of Nicaea, roughly around 18 or 872 or something like that. There was a Second Council of Nicaea that came about. Nobody speaks about it. Well, I think it's time that we dig deeper and start speaking about these different councils that's out there. Oh shit. You get what I'm saying? So, once again, this is a part of history. 732. 732. And listen to this. Listen to this. Listen to the life of this persona, because later on, this, once she had a kid, this is what they started to so they came with their own ideas before she married Constantine, you know.
In 732, the Eastern Roman Empire was under threat of invasion from the Umayyad Caliphate. Seeking allies, Leo III the Isaurian sent an embassy to Bihar, Khagan of the Khazars. The alliance was sealed with the marriage of Tzitsak to Constantine V, son and junior co-ruler of Leo.
See,
Tzitsak was escorted to
Constantine.
Constantinople for her marriage. Constantine was about 14 years old, while Tzitsak may have been even younger, as she would not give birth for 18 years. 3. Tzitsak became a Christian under the baptismal name Irene. Tzitsak's wedding gown became famous, starting a new fashion craze in Constantinople for male robes called Tsitsakia.
See, that's an important part of history right there. Why? Because this changed everything, right? The marriage arrangement, so on and so forth. However you want to look at this, right? Going back to the Romans, right? How they manipulated different variations of things, right? It gets deeper than that. It actually gets a lot deeper than that, because these are the identity thieves. This goes into the identity thieves. This goes into the blood eaters. Okay. This goes into blood eaters. This is based off of the religious text of how this group came about into like the marriage of. Think about that. Constantine. Constantine. Yes, it's not the Constantine that we know, because remember, the Constantine that we know was around for 325, you know, for the first council of Nicaea, right? And this is 750.
On January 25, 750, Constantine and Sitsak had a son, Leo, who would succeed his father as Emperor Leo IV, better known as Leo the Khazar. Leo's birth is the last mention of Irene in the historical record. By the following year, Constantine was already married to his second wife Maria. Linda Garland has suggested Sitsak died in childbirth.
See? Remember, Constantine was punished because he unalived his wife and his mother at the time. Remember? He was punished. He, according to what they say, according to history, now, according to what this is, after she gave birth to Leo, she never was heard of again, right? And this is Leo, Emperor Leo, you know. So this is around this is perfect for the history of what is, always was, and always will be, because this goes into the Athenians and so on and so forth. So this is bringing us into the history of how all of this came about, right? Bringing us into the history of how all this came about. So now you have Constantine and this Kuzak, or whatever the person, the princess of this, right? Now let's listen. Let's listen to go further into history and how the Athenians came into the picture. Because now this is going
Leo
into the
IV
Atlantis
Khazar, Greek, Leno
cataclysm.
Menu Chi Zeta Alpha Rho Omicron, Romanized, Leon Ho Khazaros, January 25, 750 to 8 September 780, was Byzantine emperor from 775 to 780 AD. He was born to Emperor Constantine V and Empress Tsitsak in 750. He was elevated to co-emperor in the next year, in 751, and married to Irene of Athens in 769. When Constantine V died in September 775, while campaigning against the Bulgars, Leo IV became senior emperor. In 778, Leo raided Abbasid Syria, decisively defeating the Abbasid army outside of Germanicia. Leo died on September 8, 780, of tuberculosis. He was succeeded by his underage son Constantine VI, with Irene serving as regent.
Now, see, now we're going into, see, this is why they kept on repeating names. Constantine the Fifth, Constantine the Sixth, Constantine. This was a part of confusing history right here, right? Because you really didn't know what Constantine did, what Constantine proceeded to do, what, so on and so forth, right? But when you look at this and you're looking at the person that actually is sticking to this, is actually the mom. The mom is the one that's okay. The next Constantine, who is he followed by? Oh, the mother was his handler. Ironically, we have the same type of situations going on right now where you have P. Diddy, but his aunt is his handler. Where you have other people, but guess what? They have a woman as a handler. Sounds very similar. Interesting. Hmm. 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 So again, this is, think about this. This is happening at young ages. These are kings. They're becoming kings at 14 years old. Parents probably off, unaliving at 30 something, or whatever the case may be, so on and so forth.
Leo was by this point suffering from tuberculosis, which, combined with the infancy of his son, Constantine VI, gave two of Leo's half-brothers, the Caesars Nikephoros and Christopher, hope of attaining the throne. These hopes were crushed when, in 776, Leo elevated Constantine to Caesar, declaring him to be his successor. Shortly after this, Nikephoros and Christopher were discovered conspiring against Leo. Despite public opinion supporting the execution of the pair, Leo instead chose to pardon them, although he did exile several other plotters to share Sun, 4, 3, 7.
Now, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing about this, right? We're going to, I mean, if we go back into the history of this, we got to start with Constantine the Great, right? Because this is the Constantine that we know changed history, right? This is the Constantine that we know for sure changed history. Because in 325, right? And mind you, Constantine unalived in 337, right? In 325 AD, this is the time that he manipulated the text for the Christians, so on and so forth, right? This is where our problem starts. The first Antichrist.
Constantine I, G, February 27, 272 to 22 May 337, also known as Constantine the Great, or known mononymously as Constantine, was Roman emperor from AD 306 to 337 and the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity. He played a pivotal role in elevating the status of Christianity in Rome. The Edict of Milan decriminalizing Christian practice and ceasing Christian persecution. This was a turning point in the Christianization of the Roman Empire. He founded the city of Constantinople, now Istanbul, and made it the capital of the empire, which it remained for over a millennium.
Now, excuse me. Sorry, I'm coming off of a cold. That's why I haven't been live for the last couple of days. So when you get into this, now we got to dig into Constantine, right? He were born, okay, we don't want to know about that, right? We want to get into the Constantine when he changed, dates and times, right? That's what we want to get into. When they felt like Rome was losing a battle, right, to the Christians during this time, right? He came up with a plan. This is how Rome started adopting Christianity, is because the leader said, you know what? Hey, let's trick them and pretend like we adopting this shit in order to stop, because we see that we losing. We see that we losing. And this is an important part of history because this is the fight against worshiping of gods, right? They were literally losing. And he was like, okay, I got a plan. That's when he went to the
Constantine had returned to Nicomedia
Council
from
of
the Eastern
Nicaea.
Front by the spring of 303, in time to witness the beginnings of Diocletian's great persecution, the most severe persecution of Christians in Roman history, 53, 54. In late 302, Diocletian and Galerius sent a messenger to the oracle of Apollo at Didyma with an inquiry about Christians, 55, 56. Constantine could recall his presence at the palace when the messenger returned and Diocletian accepted the imperial court's demands for universal persecution, 57, 58. On February 23, 303, Diocletian ordered the destruction of Nicomedia's new church, condemned its scriptures to the flames, and had its treasures seized. In the months that followed, churches and scriptures were destroyed, Christians were deprived of official ranks, and priests were imprisoned, 59. It is unlikely that Constantine played any role in the persecution, 60. In his later writings, he attempted to present himself as an opponent of Diocletian's sanguinary edicts against the worshippers of God, 61, 62, but nothing indicates that he opposed it effectively at the time. Although no contemporary Christian challenged Constantine for his inaction during the persecutions, it remained a political liability throughout his life. 63.
See? Literally, literally, he was opposing Christianity at first. Later on, realizing that he's losing, realizing, he said, okay, boom, coming up with a plan. And that was because at that time, by the priesthood, he was punished to go through a form of reincarnations because of what he did was, unthinkable, whatever the case may be. So later on, he disguised the plan based off of the whole savory thing. Like someone came and saved them, the whole, savior. That was to ease his, burden of his punishment. So in order to ease his burden of his punishment, this was the plan that he came up with. He said, okay, boom, we're going to do this. We're going to change that. We're going to change this. We're not going to tell them that this is talking about the vessel. We're not going to tell them that this is talking about the body and the essence of, the what's in the vessel. We're not going to tell them that. You see what I'm saying? And this was around this time Constantine decided to, but he didn't want to give them the win though. He didn't want to give them the victory of putting it in according to uh the book, like according to exactly what the author wanted. So this is why they changed a bunch of stuff. Hold on, let me get to the 325 AD Council of Nicaea. So here we have, and this is important because this goes into Helen. This goes into what we know as the biblical text. Really, this goes into a lot of stuff. Uh, so if you get a chance, look this up. If you get a chance, right now we're looking at Constantine the first, 306 to 337. Later on, we'll get into Constantine the second, 337 to 340. When we get into the fifth Constantine, the one that we were talking about that marries the eaters of blood, you might as well say that's like, uh, a however many years later, like this is so many Constantines later that they adopt this, the eaters of blood, so or the identity thieves. And this comes into Cleopatra. This comes into the trick of Cleopatra, like her bloodline, her false bloodline. Like this goes into the whitewashing of the world, how they changed everything in order to create this bloodline of their own, so to speak. Because at this time, there was no bloodlines at this time. Let's be clear, there's no DNA databases at this time in order to give, this is the blood of that, this is the blood. Now we sit and we trace our blood back and we do all of this other stuff, but we didn't do that previous. All right. So uh so the way hold on. Before he fell ill, we got to go into the before he fell ill part. Okay, in 328. Okay, we close to the Council of Nicaea part. Choo. Constantine had his elder son Cyber season put to death by cold poison at Pola. Something between 15 a million 17 to 26. Council of Nicaea 325. Okay. Go up. I think this was ruthless times. You know what I mean? You might as well say this was very brutal and ruthless times because, you know, they were unaliving sons, mothers. It was bad.
N 321. He legislated that the Venerable Sunday should be a day of rest for all citizens. 240. In 323, he issued a decree banning Christians from participating.
This is important right here. This is important right here. Listen to what they just said. Sunday should be the day of rest for all citizens. See? So this is in 321. This is when they changed it to Sunday. So what day was it before that? Huh? If they declared that Sunday should be the resting day, then that means it was a day, it was something else before then, right? I'm telling you, they altered and changed.
Participating in state sacrifices. 241. After the pagan gods had disappeared from his coinage, Christian symbols appeared as Constantine's attributes, the chi rho between his hands or on his labarum. 242. As well on the coinage. 243. The reign of Constantine established a precedent for the emperor to have great influence and authority in the early Christian councils, most notably the dispute over Arianism. Constantine disliked the risks to societal stability that religious disputes and controversies brought with them, preferring to establish an orthodoxy. 244. His influence over the church councils was to enforce doctrine, root out heresy, and uphold ecclesiastical unity. The church's role was to determine proper worship, doctrines, and dogma. 245. North African bishops struggled with Christian bishops who had been ordained by Donatus in opposition to Caecilian from 313 to 316. The African bishops could not come to terms, and the Donatists asked Constantine to act as a judge in the dispute. 3 regional church councils and another trial before Constantine all ruled against Donatus and the Donatism movement in North Africa. In 317, Constantine issued an edict to confiscate Donatist church property and to send Donatist clergy into exile. 246. More significantly, in 325 he summoned the First Council of Nicaea, most known for its dealing with Arianism and for instituting the Nicene Creed. 247. He enforced the council's prohibition against celebrating the Lord's Supper on the day before the Jewish Passover, which marked a definite break of Christianity from the Judaic tradition. From then on, the solar Julian calendar was given precedence over the lunisolar Hebrew calendar among the Christian churches of the Roman Empire. 248. Constantine made some new laws regarding the Jews. Some of them were unfavorable towards Jews, although they were not harsher than those of his predecessors. 249. It was made illegal for Jews to seek converts or to attack other Jews who had converted to Christianity. 249. They were forbidden to own Christian slaves or to circumcise their slaves. 250. 251. On the other hand, Jewish clergy were given the same exemptions as Christian clergy. 249. 252.
And later, and here we are, however many eons later, after these rules was placed in play, because there wasn't no Christians back then. There was people who worshiped, right? And they gave him this name. The name Christian, you could look it up in your Bible coordinates or whatever. The name Christian was brought on by pagan worshipers who used that word to ridicule people who follow Christ, who was trying to be an example of Christ, right? And when everything took place, we had a different calendar then. We had a different calendar. So all of this came about and everything started changing based off of the Nicene Creed, right? So this creed, you know, the creed of Constantine Noble, because that's what it really was, you know what I mean? It was orchestrated and then put out there. And here we are fighting and arguing about something that was created by man, right? This ain't saying that God sent this down. This is not saying none of that. This is saying that man sat down and decided to descript an idea of how humanity should be ran based off of mankind.
The Nicene Creed, also called the Creed of Constantinople, 1, is the defining statement of belief of Nicene Christianity, 2, 3, and in those Christian denominations that adhere to it. The original Nicene Creed was first adopted at the First Council of Nicaea in 325. According to the traditional view, forwarded by the Council of Chalcedon of 451, the creed was amended in 381 by the First Council of Constantinople as consonant to the Holy and Great Synod of Nice. For many scholars, weasel words, comment on these ancient councils, saying, there is a failure of evidence for this position since no one between the years of 381 to 451 thought of it in this light. 5. Further, a creed, almost identical in form, was used as early as 374 by Saint Epiphanius of Salamis. 6. The amended form is presently, as of, referred to as the Nicene Creed or the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed. J.N.D. Kelly, who stands among historians as an authority on creedal statements, Peacock Prose, disagrees. He says that since the First Council of Constantinople was not considered ecumenical until the Council of Chalcedon in 451, the absence of documentation during this period does not logically necessitate rejecting the amended creed as an expansion of the original Nicene Creed of 325. 6. The Nicene Creed is part of the profession of faith required of those undertaking important functions within the Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, Lutheran, Anglican, Methodist, and other Protestant traditions including the Waldensian and Reformed, Continental Reformed, Presbyterian, Congregationalist and Reformed Baptist. 7, 8, 9, 10. Nicene Christianity regards Jesus as divine and begotten of the Father. 11. Various conflicting theological views existed before the 4th century, and these disagreements would eventually spur the ecumenical councils to develop the Nicene Creed. Various non-Nicene beliefs have emerged and re-emerged since the 4th century, all of which, citation needed, are considered heresies. 12. By adherents of Nicene Christianity. In the liturgical churches of Western Christianity, the Nicene Creed is in use alongside the less widespread Apostles' Creed, 13, 14, 15, and Athanasian Creed, 16, 8, 17, 18, an affirmation of faith. By default, the Nicene Creed is usually said immediately after the sermon or homily following the Gospel reading at the Eucharist, at least on Sundays and major festivals. In musical settings, particularly when sung in Latin, this creed is usually referred to by its first word, credo. On Sundays and solemnities, one of these two creeds is recited in the Roman Rite Mass after the homily. In the Byzantine Rite, the Nicene Creed is sung or recited at the Divine Liturgy, immediately preceding the anaphora, Eucharistic prayer, is also recited daily at Compline, 1920. The current authoritative English translation in use in the Catholic Church since 2011 was done by the International Commission on English in the Liturgy, 21-22.
Now, once again, you guys might be trying to figure out, why is this creed so important? Because even now, in a time of conflict, we as Christians, of those who are of this creed, can call upon this creed, right? Because this creed can be called upon during war times. This is the purpose of this creed, right? As of right now, we technically don't have no seat at the table. But due to the fact that our social security number and our, history of America is tied in through this old claw that allows us the current see, right? Because it's actually the Holy See, the fear of the Holy See, right? We can invoke such creed because we actually go by Greek laws more than we go by any other. And let's just take a listen to what this creed involves. Okay.
The purpose of a creed is to provide a doctrinal statement of correct belief among Christians amid controversy. 23. The creeds of Christianity have been drawn up at times of conflict about doctrine. Acceptance or rejection of a creed served to distinguish believers and heretics, particularly the adherents of Arianism. 23. For that reason, a creed was called in Greek a sigma mu beta omicron lambda omicron nu, symbolon, which originally meant half of a broken object which, when fitted to the other half, verified the bearers. Identity. 24. The Greek word passed through Latin symbolum into English, symbol, which only later took on the meaning of an outward sign of something. 25. The Nicene Creed was adopted to resolve the Arian controversy, whose leader, Arius, a clergyman of Alexandria, objected to Alexander's, the bishop of the time, apparent carelessness in blurring the distinction of nature between the Father and the Son by his emphasis on eternal generation. 26. Emperor Constantine called the council at Nicaea to resolve the dispute in the church, which resulted from the widespread adoption of Arius' teachings, which threatened to destabilize the entire Roman Empire. Following the formulation of the Nicene Creed, Arius' teachings were henceforth marked as heresy. 27. The Nicene Creed of 325 explicitly affirms the Father as the one God, and as the Almighty, and Jesus Christ as the Son of God, as begotten of the essence of the Father, and therefore as consubstantial with the Father, meaning, of the same substance. 28, 29, as the Father, very God of very God. The Creed of 325 does mention the Holy Spirit but not as God, or as consubstantial with the Father. The 381 revision of the Creed at Constantinople, i.e., the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed, which is often simply referred to as the Nicene Creed, speaks of the Holy Spirit as worshipped and glorified with the Father and the Son. 30.
Now, if you don't know, that means that the Trinity wasn't always the Trinity until 381 when it was revived, and then the Holy Spirit was added to the worship of the Father and the Son. Before that, it was just the worship of the Father and the Son. Later, they added the Holy Spirit in part of that worship of the Father and the Son, thus far birthing what we now know of as the Holy Trinity. Right? Right? Okay. So, as we further get into this, you will start to see or realize certain things that was put in place throughout the history of the world. This ain't nothing that you can't look up. You know what I mean? Everybody could look this up, We believe in the Holy Spirit, so therefore if we all believe in what it is that we believe, then just as well as they have recalled this in times of importance in order to rewrite, we now should be able to do the same thing, which is invoke this creed and call upon a reviving of what we know to be, is, always was, and always will be. Because something is surely out of text. So if all of these different historians, if all of these different people can use this and invoke this creed in order to change something that is written, then we should be able to invoke this same creed under this same claw, because we are all born into this, right? Right? One's in the chat if you guys get what I'm saying. One's in the chat if you understand, especially if we entering a holy war. If we're entering a holy war, then for sure, we should be able to call upon this creed. Hmm? Hmm? I mean, I know I want to know what's going on if my spirit and my soul is on the line. I want to know what's going on. I want to be at the table for the conversation. You think I want Trump deciding what the fuck goes on with my spirit, my soul? He can't say what the fuck goes on with my spirit, my soul. Hmm? Y'all better get what I'm putting down, and y'all better pick it up quick, because it's all happening fast. If y'all ain't keeping up with it, I'm trying to tell y'all without telling y'all what goes on.
Thomas Aquinas stated that the phrase for us men, and for our salvation was to refute the error of Origen, who alleged that by the power of Christ's passion even the devils were to be set free. He also stated that the phrases stating Jesus was made incarnate by the Holy Spirit was to refute the Manichaeans, so that we may believe that he assumed true flesh and not a fantastic body, and he came down from heaven was to refute the error of Photinus, who asserted that Christ was no more than a man. Furthermore, the phrase "and he was made man" was to exclude the error of Nestorius, according to whose contention the Son of God would be said to dwell in man, rather than to be man. 31.
Do you hear what that just said? Do you hear what that just said? It just told you a great secret. It just revealed a great secret to you. Listen, I'm going to read it, right? It says, and the phrase "he was made man" was to exclude the error, right? This was an error that they say, right? According to whom it was the Son of God would be said to dwell in man, right? Rather than to be a man, right? So, and they changed that. It says that Christ dwells in man. That means in all of mankind, Christ is in all of mankind, right? But they changed it to be a man. See that? See how that one phrase changes everything? Right? Okay. So if we was to go back into the, you know, text, because this didn't come about into the 5th century, right? Because you got the 1st century, and we talked about that, the 1st century, Apollonius, so on and so forth, right? So you got 1st century, and then you have Jesus coming about in the 4th century, being arguably put in the 5th century, right? But coming with depictions of other people who was talked about in the 1 through 4 century, right? So they took the history of these other personas that was in the 1 through 4 history, smushed them all into one person, right? In the 5th century, and now we think that it's one God, right? So all the different formats of what was ideally idea of how we were supposed to, you know, reflect one another, right? Later became just an idea of one persona of reflection. See, there's a lot of different greats in the history. There's a lot of different crises in the history. But later we were tricked to believe that there were only one Christ, because why should we all believe that we have the ability to be Christ? Why should we believe in a multi-Christ system? Do you get what I'm saying? One's in the chat if you understand what I just said. Huh? One's in the chat if you understand what I just said. I just said some I just said some Huh? This is why we don't believe that we can be the Christ. This is why everyone don't believe that they are Christ, because they made you believe, right, that there was only one. They made you believe there was only one. All right. And that's why we say, like, if they was able to like rewrite history based off of their ideas, based off of what they wanted, then this is what we got out of that. a remake, of what was supposed to be. Let's keep listening.
What is known as the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed, or the Nicene-Constantinopolitan Creed, b, received this name because it was adopted at the Second Ecumenical Council held in Constantinople in 381 as a modification of the original Nicene Creed of 325. The most notable difference is the additional section. Creed of 325.
I gotta pause it right there because this is what I was saying, right? In 381, the second council. This is the second Emilical council or whatever. So the second council then revamped what the first council of Nicaea put together, right? So we're going to go into them next. This is the second council because this is when the identity thieves come. This is many Constantines later, and this is, how they rewrite history based off of the current persona, right? So everybody got to add what they wanted to how mankind should carry themselves or be based off of their fears, based off of whatever it is that they contemplated in the world would disturb the world, so on and so forth, right? So I'm telling y'all, it's about to get stranger than fiction. Okay. If you haven't already noticed that it's stranger than fiction, then you're about to see that it's really stranger than fiction.
In that light, it also became very commonly known simply as the Nicene Creed. It is the only authoritative ecumenical statement of the Christian faith accepted by the Catholic Church, with the addition of the Filioque, the Eastern Orthodox Church, Oriental Orthodoxy, the Church of the East, and much of Protestantism including the Anglican Communion. 44, 45. The Apostles' and Athanasian creeds are not as widely accepted. 12. It differs in several respects, both by addition and omission, from the creed adopted at the First Council of Nicaea. The most notable difference is the additional section. And we believe in the Holy Ghost, the Lord and giver of life, who proceedeth from the Father, who with the Father and the Son together is worshipped and glorified, who spake by the prophets. And we believe in one holy, Catholic and Apostolic Church. We acknowledge one baptism for the remission of sins, and we look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen. 46. Since the end of the 19th century, 47, scholars have questioned the traditional explanation of the origin of this creed, which has been passed down in the name of the Council, whose official acts have been lost over time. A local council of Constantinople in 382 and the Third Ecumenical Council, Council of Ephesus of 431, made no mention of it, 48, with the latter affirming the 325 Creed of Nicaea as a valid statement of the faith and using it to denounce Nestorianism. Though some scholarship claims that hints of the later creed's existence are discernible in some writings, 49, no extant document gives its text or makes explicit mention of it earlier than the Fourth Ecumenical Council at Chalcedon in 451, 47, 48, 50. Many of the bishops of the 451 council themselves had never heard of it and initially greeted it skeptically, but it was then produced from the episcopal archives of Constantinople, and the council accepted it, not as supplying any omission but as an authentic interpretation of the faith of Nicaea. 48. Despite the questions raised, it is considered most likely that this creed was introduced at the 381 Second Ecumenical Council, 12. Based on
Now,
evidence both internal and external to the text,
if you don't know what that means that the Holy Spirit, or what we believe, changed. So, because belief is an unknown system, they changed what they believed when they started knowing more stuff. So once they started knowing more stuff, what they believed changed, or it acquired more. Do you get what I'm saying? Right? But before that, you got to remember there was a religion before that, right? And this was basically so people can denounce this religion. They came up with the Christianity religion, but this was the first ideally format. And back then they had different religions that they called. They just had, isms on it. You know what I mean?
Nestorianism is a term used in Christian theology and church history to refer to several mutually related but doctrinally distinct sets of teachings that fall under the umbrella term diophysitism, such as two natures in Christ, human and divine, or two persons in Christ, the man and the word. 1. The extent to which those two definitions are actually distinct is also debatable. 2. The first meaning of the term is related to the teachings of Christian theologian Nestorius, d.c. AD 451, as according to his immediate opponents at the Council of Ephesus and traditionally used by Miaphysites. The second meaning of the term relates to a set of later theological teachings that were traditionally labeled as Nestorian by Chalcedonians but differ in the teachings of Nestorius in origin, scope, and terminology. 3. Per the latter definition, the Oxford English Dictionary defines Nestorianism as
You got to remember, you know what I mean? You got to remember at this time to study and journey and go learn for yourself. Some of this stuff was taboo. So those who, dare to always question, those who dare to, always you know, basically put themselves in that hot seat, challenge. Socrates said it, Socrates said, don't ever be scared to, question the world. Always question everything in the world. You know what I mean? Later on, they changed all of this, you know? Later on, they changed a lot of things, whereas like before we had the right to explore, even if it was books, even if it was just learning, these came with different academies. These, at this time, knowledge was not as, given as it is, if you would say. Like back then, like you gotta imagine, like people didn't even know how to read, write. We didn't have these numbers that we have now. Like, I mean, I guess people don't know how to read or write now, you know what I mean? They just faking it till they making it.
the original definition of Nestorianism, as articulated by Nestorius himself, is preserved primarily in his surviving writings on topics such as Mariology and Christology. Although many of his works were lost or destroyed, others have been transmitted through his opponents or preserved in Church of the East libraries. Most notable among these is the Bazaar of Heracleides, composed during his exile following the Council of Chalcedon. The modern rediscovery of the Bazaar has prompted renewed scholarly interest in reconstructing Nestorius's own theological positions, which appear to diverge in significant respects from the two-person formulation of Christology attributed to him by both his contemporaries and later critics. 5. His theology was influenced by teachings of Theodore of Mopsuestia, d. 428, the most prominent theologian of the Antiochian school. Nestorian Mariology prefers the title Christotokos, which encompasses the term Theotokos, God-bearer, for Mary, thus emphasizing distinction between divine and human aspects of the incarnation, and at the same time their unity in the person of Christ. Nestorian Christology promotes the concept of a prosopic union of two concrete realities, divine and human, in Jesus Christ. 6. As opposed to the concept of a hypostatic union of two hypostases into one. The distinction is between two hypostases in one person and two hypostases united into one hypostasis, respectively. Hypostasis is not seen as subject, but rather a nature existing in reality. This Christological position is viewed by the West as radical diophysitism. 7. And, according to Chalcedonian Christianity, differs from their diophysitism, which was reaffirmed at the Council of Chalcedon in 451. 8. Such teachings brought Nestorius into conflict with other prominent church leaders, most notably Cyril of Alexandria.
Now, you might think like this wasn't a time of that, but you got to think like all these religions that we have now, all these denominations or nominations, whatever you want to call it, right? Like at one point, they probably had to go through like you know how they had to fight for dojos and stuff like that to be named. Like they probably was walking around challenging people like that. You know what I mean? They probably was walking around challenging each other like that. Like, but it was a battle of wits, though, to determine if your God, was the righteous God, or if your school had the right to exist in teaching or, practicing, as we say, you know. But this is what was going on at that time, and people were all different types of people were writing different ideas of ways of how mankind should be civil, or how mankind should act. And certain things got voted in, certain things got voted out. How you think we got 66 books of the Bible? There were way more books than that. They just voted for these 66 books to get put in, right? And this goes back to God bearer, what was considered to be the Virgin Mary, so on and so forth. That's why I say all of this stuff tie back into what we have as our foundation. This is our foundation. This is, and I'm not saying that because like I know a lot of people are gonna say that's not my foundation, that's your foundation. Like I'm the original. I'm da, 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 da. But why you think Mary share a book in the Quran? Why you think she has a book in the Quran? The only woman to have a book in the Quran. Why do you think that? Right? That's why I said a lot of this is important. But we'll never look at the importance of it because we keep on overlooking factors.
Mary, B., was a first-century Jewish woman of Nazareth, 9, the wife of Joseph and the mother of Jesus. She is an important figure of Christianity, venerated under various titles such as Virgin or Queen, many of them mentioned in the Litany of Loretto. The Eastern and Oriental Orthodox, Catholic, Evangelical Lutheran, Reformed, Anglican, Methodist and Baptist churches believe that Mary, as Mother of Jesus, is the Mother of God. The Church of the East historically regarded her as Christotokos, a term still used in Assyrian Church of the East liturgy. 10. She has the highest position in Islam among all women and is mentioned numerous times in the Quran, including in a chapter named after her. 11, 12, 13. She is also revered in the Baha'i faith and the Druze faith. 14. The Synoptic Gospels name Mary as the mother of Jesus. The Gospels of Matthew and Luke describe Mary as a virgin, c. who was chosen by God to conceive Jesus through the Holy Spirit. After giving birth to Jesus in Bethlehem, she and her husband Joseph raised him in the city of Nazareth in Galilee, and she was in Jerusalem at his crucifixion and with the apostles after his ascension. Although her later life is not accounted in the Bible, Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, and some Protestant traditions believe that her body was raised into heaven at the end of her earthly life, which is known in Western Christianity as the Assumption of Mary and in Eastern Christianity as the Dormition of the Mother of God.
Now, before she was the mother of God and so on and so forth, she was considered, or the term Mary was considered to be a God bearer, right? This is going back to God bearer, right? Now, this is Greek. Later translated, later changed, later, right?
Theotokos, Koine Greek, Theta Epsilon Omicron Tau Kappa Omicron, A, is a title of Mary, Mother of Jesus, used especially in Eastern Christianity. The usual Latin translations are Dei Genitrix or Dei Para, approximately, parent, femme, of God. Common English translations are Mother of God or God-bearer, but these both have different literal equivalents in ancient Greek, mutau itero theta epsilon omicron, and theta epsilon omicron phi omicron respectively, 4 to 5. The title has been in use since the 3rd century, and in the liturgy of St. James, 4th century. 6. The Council of Ephesus in AD 431 decreed that Mary is the Theotokos because her son Jesus is both God and man, one divine person from two natures, divine and human, intimately and hypostatically united. 7, 8. The title of Mother of God, Ancient Greek, mu tau etero, tau omicron, theta epsilon omicron, clarification needed, or Mother of Incarnate God, abbreviated mu rho theta upsilon, the first and last letter of main two words in Greek, is most often used in English, largely due to the lack of a satisfactory equivalent of the Greek tau kappa omicron. For the same reason, the title is often left untranslated, as Theotokos, in Eastern liturgical usage of other languages. Theotokos is also used as the term for an Eastern icon, or type of icon, of the mother with child, typically called a Madonna in the Western tradition, as in the Theotokos of Vladimir, both for the original 12th century icon and for icons that are copies or imitate its composition.
Now, once again, this title is given, right? This is a title that is given. If you get into this, you give somebody this title, Mother of God, you could say that, any of us, my mother can have this title if I determined that I was a God, right? Or however we want to look at this, right? If somewhere down the line there was a God in me, because there's a God in all of us, right? Then my God bearer will be my mother, right? So on and so forth, right? And this is how they determined who was deemed to have that title according to different areas, tribes, people in that town, so on and so forth, right? Is a title that was given, Mother of God, God bearer, so on and so forth. But it ain't determined until that person become great, until that persona becomes great, because this is before Mary. This title was before Mary, ancient Greek, or comatron, or a comic, what they just said. They said it. When you go into ancient Greek, this is before what we know of as the story, and they had that title.
Ancient Greek, lambda lambda eta nu iota kappa, Hellenic, 1, includes the forms of the Greek language used in ancient Greece and the ancient world from around 1500 BC to 300 BC. It is often roughly divided into the following periods: Mycenaean Greek, circa 1400, c. 1200 BC, Dark Ages, circa 1200, c. 800 BC, the Archaic or Homeric period, c. 800, c. 500 BC, and the Classical period, c. 500, c. 300 BC. 2. Ancient Greek was the language of Homer and of 5th century Athenian historians, playwrights, and philosophers. It has contributed many words to English vocabulary and has been a standard subject of study in educational institutions of the Western world since the Renaissance. This article primarily contains information about the epic and classical periods of the language, which are the best attested periods and considered most typical of ancient Greek.
So, once again, we go back to Greek mythology. Somewhere down the line, we can invoke, let's say, we can invoke what is, always was, and always will be. So if there is something going on with, or a change in what is spirituality, then we should be able to invoke the Nicene Creed in order to rewrite what is, always was, and always will be, because obviously something isn't right. And if we have the technology, which is knowledge, right, then we have the ability to go back and actually fix what's wrong. We could do that. And it's rewriting history, but is they not rewriting history right now? Are we not in the process of rewriting history in order to fit someone else's idea? Did Trump not say, "Oh, I think we're going to change this museum and make it a little less because when white people leave this museum, they are sad." That's rewriting history. So if you can rewrite history, then why can't we rewrite it in a good way? Hmm? Hmm? Now, the study of ancient Greek has a long, long, long history. I think we're a part of this, and I think we've been studying ancient Greek for a very long time now. And for those of you that's in the UK, pay attention. You're a part of the bullshit too.
The study of ancient Greek in European countries in addition to Latin occupied an important place in the syllabus from the Renaissance until the beginning of the 20th century. This was true as well in the United States, where many of the nation's founders received a classically based education. C. Latin was emphasized in American colleges, but Greek also was required in the colonial and early national eras. D. And the study of ancient Greece became increasingly popular in the mid to late 19th century, the age of American Philhellenism. 33. In particular, female intellectuals of the era designated the mastering of ancient Greek as essential in becoming a woman of letters. 34. Ancient Greek is still taught as a compulsory or optional subject, especially at traditional or elite schools throughout Europe, such as public schools and grammar schools in the United Kingdom. It is compulsory in the Liceo Classico in Italy, in the Gymnasium in the Netherlands, in some classes in Austria, in Klasicna Gimnazija, grammar school, orientation, classical languages, in Croatia, in classical studies in ASO in Belgium, and it is optional in the humanities-oriented gymnasium in Germany, usually as a third language after Latin and English, from the age of 14 to 18. In 2006-2007, 15,000 pupils studied ancient Greek in Germany according to the Federal Statistical Office of Germany, and 280,000 pupils studied it in Italy. 35. It is a compulsory subject alongside Latin in the humanities branch of the Spanish Baccalaureate. Ancient Greek is taught at most major universities worldwide, often combined with Latin as part of the study of classics. In 2010,
Now, why would you blend Greek with Latin? You might think, why? Right? Why not keep the two separate? Well, that comes with understanding the spell that is in the word. Because in order for you to do what? Even now, if you have Greek letters, such as Y, what is that? Yahweh, whatever, you add the vowels, right? You add the E's, the A's, so on and so forth, right? So you have the constant and then you have the vowel, right? So however you look at this, words put together. Greek and Latin put together to make English, right? Which is very, very prominent when it comes to the spell that is in the word, because you have a spelling word and then you have the spell in word. Hmm? Hmm? Anybody paying attention? This is why your words matter. This is why vibrational frequency matters. This is why your social security number is tied to the Holy See, that is tied to this same claw, that is tied to this same doctrine that allows you to be a corporation, but that corporation is owned by America. You're a vessel, your body. This is why your tombstone will have your name in all caps, indicating that the property of the United States is no longer in working form, right? And you can look this up. This goes back to the secret that was, put into this goes back further than this, because this goes back to the book of Revelations, roughly Revelation 17, 1 through 7, which is Mystery Babylon. your social security number is tied to the book of Revelations, Mystery Babylon. Think about that. Why is your social security number tied to the book? How is your social security number tied to the book of Revelations? The time that social security numbers came out and the time that the book of Revelations came out is way far off. If you go into the secret of Sumeria and the Sumerian text, so on and so forth, and you go into, like, the marine laws and the laws of the operation of the sea and why it's such a secret that we're tied into this, because it comes from the queen. Through this, it was a way to tie us into this by giving us the title of citizens. We're still under some sort of ownership because we took the title citizens, and that comes with your social security card. Look it up. Look it up. You can look it up. We all have the ability to look this stuff up, right? We got to go back to Plato. Huh? Huh? Anybody? Anybody knows what Plato talked about? Huh? Anybody? Huh? Yeah. He talked about Atlantis, right? Yeah. Socrates was his teacher, and he talked about Atlantis and the cataclysm and so on and so forth. At that time, they were allowed to study the history of this world. Not like we're not allowed to study the history of this world. Although I want to study so much more of this, I want to travel with some scholars and sit down with some greats. Maybe I could put a fund together to actually go to different places. Maybe we can actually, like, put a team together and we can put the funds together for me to get to these ancient places and sit down with some great people. That would be a great, that would be something that I would be into, allowing people to use my vessel to explore different avenues to gather more knowledge. I love gathering knowledge. I love it.
Plato,
I'm addicted to it.
Greek, Pylandetau Meganu, Platon, born c. 428 to 423 BC, died 348/347 BC, was an ancient Greek philosopher of classical Athens who is most commonly considered the foundational thinker of the Western philosophical tradition. 1. An innovator of the literary dialogue and dialectic forms. Plato influenced all the major areas of theoretical philosophy and practical philosophy, and was the founder of the Platonic Academy, a philosophical school in Athens where Plato taught the collection of philosophical theories that would later become known as Platonism. Plato's most famous contribution is his theory of forms, or ideas, which aims to solve what is now known as the problem of universals. He was influenced by the pre-Socratic thinkers Pythagoras, Heraclitus, and Parmenides, although much of what is known about them is derived from Plato himself. Along with his teacher Socrates and his student Aristotle, Plato is a central figure in the history of Western philosophy. Plato's complete works are believed to have survived for over 2,400 years, unlike that of nearly
I would
all of
love
his
to learn
contemporaries.
Latin.
2. Although their popularity has fluctuated, they have consistently been read and studied through the ages. 3. Through Platonism's outgrowth Neoplatonism, he also influenced Christian philosophy, and both Jewish and Islamic philosophy. In modern times, Alfred North Whitehead said, "The safest general characterization of the European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato."
See? Do you see how all of this always goes back to something in history? That's why I like studying it, because I like to try to put the pieces together, right? It tells you that the footnotes of Christianity will lead back to Plato. That's what I'm saying. Like, I would like to dig into the depths of this to try to it wouldn't even be really just to try to find out the truth. It would just be having the right to explore that, right? It's not saying that I'm going to find the truth. It's not saying that the truth is there. It's just saying that, I would like the right to explore the truth, you know? That's what I'm saying. Like you get when you go back right into like the history of it, like it all leads back to, you know, Plato. And then you gotta think about it. Socrates is Plato's teacher. So you go back to Socrates. Socrates said, wise man uh, knows nothing, or that would be like the idea, like he who is wise knows that he knows nothing at all, right? And so on and so forth. He says the secret of change is, giving focus to the you that you want to be and not the you that you were, right? So there was a lot of different things that came out of Socrates, Plato, some of these, Aristotle, because you got to look at this. You had Socrates as the teacher, and then Plato passed on what he knew to Aristotle. We don't have that anymore. You know what I mean? What's going on with you? Hey, it has been a long time. It's been a minute. But I've been busy with life, taking care of things in life. I would love to, well, I am going to, be here more to bring, new stuff to the table, and hopefully we can get, back, to some type of standard of level of wanting this. Like we have to want this knowledge. We have to want this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I think, we should have uh adult schools. I think more adults should be into just putting some new stuff in their mind. Is just go out there and learn some stuff. It ain't got to be how to braid hair. It ain't got to be katamatazi. It ain't got to be, whatever. You know what I mean? Uh, it should be, it should be more. You know what I mean? It should be, just going out there and just learning something. Like they say, you're supposed to learn something new every day. It's like we stopped wanting to learn. It's like we stopped wanting to, you know what I mean? A lot of people been struggling, man. Life been hitting people a lot harder now because like you have to think like if we had so many chances to put knowledge back into the world and we keep on ignoring it, you know what I mean? Like this is why the world is the way it is because Western society at some point started pushing out, you know, like wanting this knowledge. You don't have people like you ask somebody like what they want to be. You ask somebody, nobody's looking to be knowledgeable. Nobody's looking for the wise person anymore. You know, think about it. It's like that, like we're all that kid just running around like Mr. Fox, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll tenor at a Tootsie Pop? The fox is like, I don't know. I'm too cunning. Why don't you try to ask Mr. Turtle? You know, Mr. Turtle, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of the Tootsie Pop? The turtle's like, I've been here too long to try to figure that out. Why don't you just go ask Mr. Owl? You know what I'm saying? We're gonna go ask the owl. He ain't even around for the daytime. The owls only come out at night. He ain't even got male or female appendages. They gonna send us to the owl. Mr. Owl, how many licks does it take to the world may never know? This motherfucker done snatched it and bit it in some more shit. You know what I'm saying? And we wondering why knowledge and stuff is not in the world anymore. You got to remember, Plato's wrote the theory of thought. Huh? Thought. Huh? We all sitting there thinking that our thoughts belong to us. That we believe that we got these thoughts and da 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 da. No, no. A motherfucker already wrote where thoughts come from. Somebody sat down and thought about thought. Where are these thoughts coming from? These are not my own. I wonder, is there a formula to this? Is there a build up? And Moloch later becomes a, when you get into the Moloch, that's going into a Nubaru, Marduk, all of that stuff, the Molochs. Now I want y'all to think about that. I want to sit down and thought about thought. The theory of ideas. Where is these ideas coming from? You see something and you're thinking about doing something and you have an idea.
The theory of forms or theory of ideas. 1, 2, 3, also known as Platonic idealism or Platonic
Oh, okay.
realism, is a philosophical theory credited to the classical Greek philosopher Plato. A major concept in metaphysics, the
Oh
theory
yeah,
suggests that the physical world is not as
That's
real
that
or
simple.
true as forms, or ideas, typically capitalized, for the timeless, absolute, non-physical, non-physical, and unchangeable essences of all things, which objects and matter in the physical world merely participate in, imitate, or resemble. 5. In other words, forms are various abstract ideals that exist even outside of human minds and that constitute the basis of reality. Thus, Plato's theory of forms is a type of philosophical realism, asserting that certain ideas are literally real, and a type of idealism, asserting that reality is fundamentally composed of ideas, or abstract objects. Plato describes these entities only through the characters, primarily Socrates, in his dialogues, who sometimes suggest that these forms are the only objects of study that can provide knowledge. 6. The theory itself is contested by characters within the dialogues, and it remains a general point of controversy in philosophy. Nonetheless, the theory is considered to be a classical solution to the problem of universals. 7.
So basically, what he's saying is reality is a form of accumulated thoughts or ideas. That's basically what he said. He said reality, or what we think is the physical world, merely participates in resembling ideas and thoughts. Do y'all get what that means? One's in the chat if you understand what that means and why that's so important. It's not just about being a type of idealism, it's about being the idea, right? It's about having the ability to push your idea out there into so many different minds that it literally structures the world. To put the idea or the thought out there so heavily that it reforms or changes the very world that we live in. That's what Plato believed. Or ideally, that's one of his theories, right? Because there's nothing but a bunch of different theories, right? It's just different theories, right? We'll go into that later. But this is going into, what later on Christians changed to the essence, right? The substance, right? That's why I say like a lot of stuff is connected, right? You see how we jump from the theory of ideas, the thoughts, right? And then it's telling you that the timeless, absolute, non-physical, and unchangeable essence, right? Essence, right? This is going back into Greek mythology now. This is the essence of what we depicted later on to be Christ, the seed, the essence, the substance, right? Now, this is why I say if you look back, footnotes, pieces of what we know as Christianity leads back to Plato's, leads back to Socrates, leads back to Aristotle, leads back to Greek mythology, leads back to these Greek philosophers. That's why I like studying. That's why I like learning this stuff.
Usia slash Uzi Usi U slash Ancient Greek, Omicron Sigma Alpha, is a philosophical and theological term, originally used in ancient Greek philosophy, then later in Christian theology. It was used by various ancient Greek philosophers, especially Aristotle, as a primary designation for philosophical concepts of essence or substance. It is analogous to concepts of being and the ontological in contemporary philosophy. In Christian theology, the concept of theta epsilon alpha omicron upsilon sigma alpha, divine essence, is one of the most important doctrinal concepts, central to the development of Trinitarian doctrine. 1. The ancient Greek term theta epsilon alpha omicron upsilon sigma alpha, thea ousia, divine essence, was translated in Latin as essentia or substantia, and hence in English as essence or substance. 2.
Now, how is the conversation of thought or ideas and where it comes from, how does it lead back to the essence of Christianity, Christ, the substance, the ointment, the secret? I mean, they even say Shakespeare had a part of writing the biblical text, you know? Can you imagine? More than 40% written by Shakespeare? Well, according to what they say, Ion was the originator of the first book, and then later they changed it to John, so on and so forth. But Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John didn't write the books, but because there was no J in the alphabet back then, just like it wasn't a letter L or W back then, I think the Greek alphabet only has 21 letters.
The term omicron sigma alpha is an ancient Greek noun, formed on the feminine present participle of the verb epsilon mu, ime, meaning to be, I am, so similar grammatically to the English noun being. There was no equivalent grammatical formation in Latin, and it was translated as essentia or substantia. Cicero coined essentia, 3, and the philosopher Seneca and rhetorician Quintilian used it as equivalent for omicron sigma alpha, while Apuleius rendered omicron sigma alpha both as essentia or substantia. In order to designate omicron sigma alpha, early Christian theologian Tertullian favored the use of substantia over essentia, while Augustine of Hippo and Boethius took the opposite stance, preferring the use of essentia as designation for omicron sigma alpha. 5. Some of the most prominent Latin authors, like Hilary of Poitiers, noted that those variants were often being used with different meanings. 6. Some modern authors also suggest that the ancient Greek term omicron sigma alpha is properly translated as essentia, essence. While
Now, essentia, essence, that goes back to the original group of the Bible, the essence, right? See what I'm saying? It's the titles. The titles hold power. The titles, you know, but that's why I say like history is very, 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 essential to us because if you want to really get to essence of it, then this is what you have to go through. Uh, Going through the formulation of what was Greek mythology, changed to Roman mythology, later to New Greek mythology. Latin comes in, um, so on and so forth, which changes up what was originally wrote. These people were studying the biological makeup of man. They were studying like the chemical structure of mankind to determine the essence. They was the ones who determined that, the a dubla oblongata was a heart-shaped part of the brain where thought was formed, right? These were, and when you read the Bible, it say, "Though a man thinketh in his heart," right? Because the thinking place was considered to be the dubla oblongata, so it was a heart-shaped place in the brain. Then the pumping place, the place that pump your blood through your body, that wasn't the heart. That's the heart of the body. The brain has a heart, and this is the thinking place. This is why it goes back to thought. This is why it goes back to Plato. This is why it goes back to Aristotle. This is why it goes back to, the philosophers, so on and so forth. Excuse me. This is why. And see, me, I like knowledge. I love it, actually. You know, I would say some things, but then the things that I say might sound strange. Even though I'm joking, you'll still think me to be strange. But this is what studying, like, different galactic wars that took place, the Lyran constellation, Orion constellation, 88 constellations of the sky, well, 89 including Ergo, uh therefore Ergo. But different words and different terminologies just spoke into the atmosphere actually changes a lot of stuff when you understand the power of frequency. And it changes thy vessel too. You know? That's why I say, like, there's actually 5 brains of the body. There's 5 brains of the body. The heart has a brain, yes. There's 5 brains of the body. You know? But a lot of people don't know that. Nah, man, just one brain. Blah, 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 blah. Nah. There's 4 brains inside your one brain. You know? The heart is literally the brain of the body. But there's 4 brains inside your one brain. You know? Man, that's why I tell people, like, go ahead, look up Valid Thor. Look up Valid Thor. You'll learn some stuff if you look up Valid Thor. Yes, manifestation is real. We all been reincarnated. We all keep being reincarnated down here. Energy is real. We are transfer energy. See, I know my previous lives. I only get fragments of it though, because I'm not like in the space that I'm supposed to be in, but I'm attached to like my kundalini, the wave that goes on inside of our body that moves up and down our spinal cord. Like, a lot of us don't have this river that flows with inside of us, that can rebirth our system, put our system back together. There's certain berries that you can put inside your body to put your nervous system back together. They're going to announce like more holistic, healthier ways of eating. In fact, I think the government already said that the fight is against unhealthy eating, if I'm not mistaken. So they're about to start forcing people to start eating healthier, start putting more healthier vegetations into their digestive system, so on and so forth, because they know the operation comes with the discipline of the body. It's the only way to make a firmer mint, right? So they know that they have to get more people to put more vegetables and stuff in their body so that can ferment in their stomach, thus far creating a gas that goes to the brain. You ever notice that when you eat certain things, there's gases that go down and then there's gases that go up? Guess what gas goes up, right? That would be fruit. When your stomach is going to like go like breaking down fructose energy, right? It's going to make you belch, burp, right? A lot of people stopped burping a long time ago because they stopped eating fruit and vegetables and shit. They don't eat it, you know what I mean? So they ain't burping. They sitting there gassy. Oh man, my stomach. Ooh, oh yeah, because you eating the lower stuff. You know what I mean? So when you realize that our fight is actually against our body, like we have to have discipline over the flesh. I know, bacon is good. We all know, Pepsi is not getting rid of them bumps on your face, but you tell yourself that you need Pepsi. We all know you don't need no damn chocolate every time your period is here. Oh, just chocolate and Pepsi. Give me chocolate and Pepsi. I don't want to break up. Cut it out. This is the stuff that we're weak to because it tastes great, so on and so forth, whatever. So we make excuses for the stuff that we like. We've been doing that shit. You know what I mean? I go with the pescatarian, man. I'm gonna tear up some tuna. I can't wait until I can actually like start buying like the tuna steaks, like the real, like just real tuna and real salmon. I know that I'm supposed to be eating that stuff raw before cooking the life I like, but you know what I mean? I can't get to that point yet in life where my pockets is right. You know what I'm saying? I want to get to the point in life where my pockets is right. It costs to eat healthy. I go buy pomegranate. That shit, you know how much for a little bottle of pomegranate? Huh? Huh? I freshly squeezed orange juice. You know how much it costs for half a gallon of freshly squozen orange juice? $18 for a half a gallon of freshly squozen orange juice. $18 it costs to eat healthy. You got to pay to eat healthy in this world. Okay? I'm trying to tell you. Okay? So, once again, this goes back to Aristotle, the Greek term for primary substance. This goes back to what they later depicted as to be the secretion or the secret of the vessel or the ointment, right? This is the world soul, so on and so forth. And like I said, I want to get deep into this. I want to go into the depths of this because this is what, they depict it to be the Christian and so on and so forth. They took a lot of stuff out, but
Substance theory, or substance attribute theory, is an ontological theory positing that objects are constituted each by a substance and properties borne by the substance but distinct from it. In this role, a substance can be referred to as a substratum or a thing in itself. 1. 2. Substances are particulars that are ontologically independent. They are able to exist all by themselves. 3. 4. Another defining feature often attributed to substances is their ability to undergo changes. Clarification needed. Changes involve something existing before, during, and after the change. They can be described in terms of a persisting substance gaining or losing properties. 3. Attributes or properties, on the other hand, are entities that can be exemplified by substances. 5. Properties characterize their bearers. They express what their bearer is like. 4. Substance is a key concept in ontology, the latter in turn part of metaphysics, which may be classified into monist, dualist, or pluralist varieties according to how many substances or individuals are said to populate, furnish, or exist in the world. According to monistic views, there is only one substance. Stoicism and Spinoza, for example, hold monistic views that pneuma or God, respectively, is the one substance in the world. These modes of thinking are sometimes associated with the idea of immanence. Dualism sees the world as being composed of two fundamental substances, for example, the Cartesian substance dualism of mind and matter. Pluralist philosophies include Plato's theory of forms and Aristotle's hylomorphic categories.
And this, let's just wrap it up with this. This is what the Bible was based off of. This is why substance is primarily referred to as God. God is that one substance that exists all by itself. Outside of anything else, God exists by itself. Everything else needs God to exist. Thus far, God is the primary substance. Same thing as Christ. Christ exists all by himself, right? But the disciples, right? Him later adding the disciples is what they needed Christ to exist. The same thing with our sky, right? So Christ in the sky is considered to be at the foot of Hercules, right? And the foot of Hercules, the hill catcher, is the opening point to the connection to the 12 zodiacs that's around our central sky, right? And those 12, the Hercules or the foot of Hercules, the gate of the gods, would be the substance that keeps those 12 together, right? Just like Christ was the substance that put the 12 disciples together, right? The same thing with your body, right? There's a substance inside the body that keeps your body together through whatever nervous system or so on, whatever system that is inside, right? Substance duality of mind and matter, right? So this all goes back to Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, right? These mysteries, these secrets, how we supposed to walk, carry, so on and so forth, it all goes back to digging through the history, understanding, stop, hiding from this, right? Is the Greek termed it something, and then later on we turned it into a physical story of Christ. Okay? We'll get into that. We'll get into how this turned into a physical story because they needed a martyrdom system. And you can't have a martyrdom system without a physical being.
Aristotle used the term substance, Greek, omicron sigma alpha ousia, in a secondary sense for genera and species understood as hylomorphic forms. Primarily, however, he used it with regard to his category of substance, the specimen, this person, or this horse, or individual, qua individual, who survives accidental change and in whom the essential properties inhere that define those universals. A substance, that which is called a substance most strictly, primarily, and most of all, is that which is neither said of a subject nor in a subject, e.g. the individual man or the individual horse. The species in which the things primarily called substances are called secondary substances, as also are the genera of these species. For example, the individual man belongs in a species, man, and animal is a genus of the species, so these, both man and animal, are called secondary substances. 6.
Now, once again, we can get into all of this because it has depth, right? And we like to explore knowledge and wisdom. And we want, a lot of people don't like this. I like it. I like it. I hope you like it. I'm going to keep on bringing more. I'm going to keep on making the connections, right? And we're going to keep on building. We're going to keep on growing in love and in light, right? And that's what we're going to do, And what we got is what we got. We got each other. And we builded it. All right.
I'm a content creator.
Y'all have a great night.
This is
Remember, if nobody told y'all that they love you, let me be the first but not the last to tell you that I love you.
To Twitch to Kick.
Y'all know what it is.
You beat creators of nonsense.
Move over.
Self-importance.
Put some knowledge back on the table, people.
Viral emptiness, no substance. Stop hogging the spotlight and just share that ish. It goes a longer way when you spread that ish. Make it rain, just spray that ish. And the chosen ones out here to change that ish. From TikTok to YouTube to Twitch to Kick, get with it, we built it, you can't flip me dip it. From TikTok to YouTube to Twitch to Kick, get with it, we built it, you can't flip me dip it. Algorithms don't move us, we move to rhythm of truth
Y'all have
in
a great
us.
night. If nobody told y'all that they love you, let me be the first one, not the last, to tell you that I love you. Remember, one image of oneself should be greater than reality. If you ain't thinking highly of yourself, nobody else won't think highly of you.
Elevating frequencies high. From TikTok to YouTube to Twitch to Kick, get with it, we built it, you can't flip me dip it. From TikTok to YouTube to Twitch to Kick, get with it, we built it, you can't flip me dip it. You can't flip the script.
Whoa.
You're having a legend. Get with it, we built it. You can't flip me dip it.
These people don't understand. Stop trying to hog the spotlight and share that shit.
Ralph the Wise, talk to him.
We built this. To the moon. To the moon, Alice.
I'm a content creator.